Unfortunately, crashing is one of the less fun parts of mountain biking. It comes with the territory and it's part of the sport. So you might experience crashes at a higher level, and you can experience crashes just as you're getting going, popping over and falling over in the parking lot. Unfortunately, they do happen, and they come at weird and wonderful times. So learning to predict when you might not crash, you can do that, but it comes with a little bit of practice and skill. So learning to understand and how to progress is the first step in how to learn when you might be crashing. So don't just jump in the deep end of everything. If you're learning to jump, don't try to jump the biggest jump that you can. Learn to progress correctly. Learn to start from the ground up. Learn to understand the skills that'll progress you and avoid and mitigate some of the risks involved in that. So learning to progress is your first step in mitigating some of the risks of crashing. Crashing is also a bit of a weird thing, and it often happens when you're pushing your limits. So this is a good and a bad thing. So when you're starting to get out of your comfort zone, it shows that you are pushing, so you might start crashing a little bit more, and you'll start to learn where your limits and boundaries are. So as you're progressing, if you are starting to crash a bit more, it might mean that you're starting to push in the right direction, and you're just starting to find where the new limits are and what you can and can't do on the bike. So like I say, it's a good thing because you're starting to understand where your limits are and how to get past them a little bit and starting to push the boundaries. But it's obviously a bad thing because you're obviously crashing, and it's not the funnest thing to do either. So it's something that you just need to understand and assess, is that when you are starting to push your limits a little bit, you might start crashing a little bit more. Again, just using step one of understanding and mitigating some of the risks in order to do that is a safe way to go about that. So you might not always know what to do if you're about to crash. So sometimes you may get a little bit of warning and beforehand, but other times you have no control. So learning where, for example, if you're about to maybe case a jump, you can compress your arms and limbs to try and absorb some of that. Other times you might just end up on the ground. So it's trying to learn to read when and where you might crash. So for example, if I'm coming through over a bunch of wet routes, slippery routes, I know I'm going to be at a higher risk of washing a wheel. So it's something that I'm going to prepare for beforehand and just be aware of. Those sort of things, learning to understand what the trail's doing, where you're at higher risks of crashing, and just starting to understand that so you can try and then obviously either correct your body position, your technique, slow down, or just start to assess, do you want to ride something that fast, and understanding where you might be crashing or the possibility comes in of a crash. One of the next steps about crashing is learning to learn from your crashes. So where you crashed, how you crashed, why you crashed is a great way to understand how to prevent it from happening again. So if you're coming through and you're sliding out in specific sections, why did you slide out there? Was the gradient maybe a little bit too steep? Were you grabbing too much brakes, too little brakes? Did you try maybe go too slow or too fast into a jump? So learn that. If you do crash, assess and just understand that to prevent it going forward. Another little hack is to learn from your friends' crashes as well. So watching other people crash from their experiences, it's a great way to just start to understand where you can prevent those same sort of things from happening to you. Often with crashing, there's so much that's going on that there's just too much to think about, and sometimes you're able to do something about it and sometimes you're not. So the first couple of things that you want to do is when you're crashing, you want to get off and away from your bike. So that comes down to ejecting the bike forward if possible. So if you're going down something really steep and you feel like it's just getting a bit too much, you want to eject the bike forward, get rid of that bike, get it away from you. Get off the side of the bike as well if possible. Just learn to jump off, get a side saddle dismount, get away from that bike. You're just a bit of a preventative measure for making things worse. So again, even when you're jumping, if you're coming in, you're jumping, you want to compress, throw the bike away, just get it away. Anytime if you land on the bike, it often ends up a little bit worse. So here are two clips of me a few years ago learning to progress. The first one, the bike lands down on top of me and definitely makes things a little bit worse. The second one, I managed to eject when the things are going bad, but I managed to at least get away from the bike and it doesn't land on top of me afterwards.
Hey guys, quick reminder, if you haven't liked and subscribed already, if you could, I'd much appreciate it. I'm really enjoying making these videos and I'd love to carry on doing it. Enjoy.
With crashing, another technique, what happens is if you're coming down and if you do end up falling, you're trying not to break your fall with your limbs, with your hands, your legs, whatever it is. That's often how you end up breaking, spraining, making things a little bit worse. What you want to do is you want to implement the tuck and roll technique, get your limbs in and just roll it out. Slowly disperse that momentum and just roll for as long as possible, if possible. Just getting your limbs and arms tucked in, trying not to extend any of those because that can make things a little bit worse. Again, like I say, getting away from the bike is one of the most important things. Get the bike away from you. Eject the bike with whatever situation it is, if possible. You can repair the bike. You're a little bit harder to repair and it takes a little bit longer. learning to understand some of the more common crashes that you might experience. So just to run through a few of them, one of the ones is a washout, so losing either your front wheel and your front wheel slides out, or perhaps your back wheel slides out and the bike just lands on its side. Another one is an over the handlebars. This can be from multiple things, hitting a pedal, hitting something in the trail, and going over the handlebars, your body going out the front door that way. Another one is a loop out. So if you're, for example, in a manual and the bike steps out forward underneath you. You also get a high side, which is what happens is sometimes you might skid and your body gets ejected sideways over the bike. That can happen in any direction. So a high side is when the back of the bike skips out, you might get a little bit squirrely and then you basically going sideways over the bike. You might come into, for jumping, you might come into a case, which is where you don't get all the way over the landing and you might land into the back of the landing. You could also over jump, which means that you land past the landing. So sometimes you might compress really hard and that could cause a crash afterwards, but the over jumping is basically missing the entire landing. Another common one is over braking. So sometimes coming into a steep section, just maybe grabbing too much brakes instead of letting the wheels roll, so locking up the brakes, that can force a bit of a slide. If you're going down something steep, you don't have much control. Ideally you want to be compressing down and letting the wheels roll. If you do need to be skidding, not over braking, because like I say, once your wheels are skidding, you don't have much control, they're not tracking the ground and they can slide out from there.
I really hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you learned a lot. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe, it would mean a lot. Anyhow, jump onto the next video and let's see what else you can learn.